Now let's go back a few steps, and specifically, let's go again to the module of the tool where we can select the two-tier mapping option. As I mentioned, you can choose for Tier 1 keyword combinations to be applied to chapter titles. This way, you use Tier 1 to filter the articles to be analyzed based on the chapter titles. This option is closer to single category or one-tier categorized mapping, as there is only one set of keyword combinations that will be applied to a given article title plus text combination. That is, Tier 1 is applied to chapter titles, and then Tier 2 is applied to the articles of the chapters that were positively flagged by Tier 1 matching. Since chapter titles are usually more concise and have less variability, Tier 1 keyword combination set would normally be shorter. And since only Tier 2 is applied to article texts, then this tier should be as specific to the topic to be mapped as possible. Other than that, the guidelines for designing the matching matrix are very similar to what we already discussed. Matching matrix may contain any number of rows coding any number of topics or provision types. Each topic or provision type must have two sets of keyword combinations associated with it. Each set of Tier 1 and Tier 2 keyword combinations may have any number of items separated by semicolons. Keyword combinations may contain placeholders or regular expressions. All rows containing topics and keyword combinations must be assigned their own ID numbers in column M, and no empty row should have an ID number assigned to it in column M. If there is no need to categorize broader thematic areas, then you can leave this column empty or assign one thematic area for all rows. And very importantly, a matching matrix, once completed, must be saved as an Excel file. So when you load this matrix into the tool, and then choose for Tier 1 to be applied to chapter titles, and then press Run, the following happens. The algorithm extracts data of a given article, its title plus text combination, as well as the title of the containing chapter. Then algorithm checks chapter title for presence of one or more Tier 1 keyword combinations from a given row of the matching matrix. If one or more Tier 1 keyword combinations from a given row of the matching matrix are detected in a given chapter title, then the algorithm checks the article's title plus text combinations for presence of one or more Tier 2 keyword combinations from that same row of the matching matrix. If title plus text of a given article are found to contain at least one keyword combination from Tier 2 set, then that article is assigned the corresponding labels for provision type and thematic area. If title plus text of a given article is found to contain no keyword combinations from Tier 2 set, then that article is assigned Other for provision type and the corresponding label for thematic area. If chapter title of a given article is found to contain no Tier 1 keyword combinations, then that article is not assigned the corresponding labels for provision type and thematic area. First, a given article is checked against all rows of the matching matrix, and having done that, the algorithm then extracts data of the following article and proceeds to check it against all rows of the matching matrix. In the mapping results data set, one article may appear more than once if it is found to address more than one coded topic or provision type. Now let's run a query where Tier 1 keyword combinations are applied to chapter titles. So now let's get back to our tool and let's go to the first module of the tool where we can select trade agreements that we want to analyze. Let's select the time period of 2015 through to 2020. 20. This way, we are selecting all of the trade agreements that were signed within the period from 2015 to 2020, and this is 49 trade agreements. And then we go to the second module of the tool, select two-tier categorized mapping. We keep our selection for using flexibility placeholders. We keep this default over here. And now let's take a look at the matching matrix that we will use for the next query. So I loaded it into the tool and I press refresh to see the matching matrix. As you can see from the setup of this matching matrix, we are going to map provisions on sustainable development. And so we have 5 categories here. There will be provisions on environment protection, general mentionings of something related to sustainable development. Then there will be provisions on climate change, on biodiversity, and on gender equality, social protection, and labor rights. And here is the first column that contains tier 1 keyword combinations. This will be applied to the chapter titles. So we will be specifically searching for the relevant provisions in the chapters that have sustainable development or sustainability in the chapter title. And within tier 2 keyword combinations, we have our different categories that we are trying to detect. So each of the provision types have their corresponding own unique set of keyword combinations that we will be searching for in the article title plus article text combination. So we have our matching matrix loaded into the tool. Now we select for the tier 1 keyword combinations to be applied to chapter titles, and then we press run. So now that the mapping is complete, we are taken to the third module of the tool where we can review the mapping results. Here they are. Out of those 49 trade agreements that we selected, 378 of their various articles contain something that is relevant to sustainable development. The first thing to note here is that it is still important for us to see whether any of the provision types that we are interested in are present within the preamble. Therefore, although preamble as a title does not contain any of the tier 1 keyword combinations that we are coded into the matching matrix, we still search for the tier 2 keyword combinations within those preambles. And we can see that, for example, China-Korea trade agreement within its preambles has mentioning of environmental protection, sustainable development, social development, and so on. So at least 3 categories are addressed within the preamble. And if we look through our mapping results, we will see that quite a few of the trade agreements have provisions or mentionings of the relevant issues within the preamble. The main focus of our mapping still was the chapters that have sustainable development or sustainability within the title. So There are plenty of trade agreements that have chapters that have sustainable development in their titles. It will be more informative to look at the summary mapping results to see the exact numbers of those chapters and to see which trade agreements are the ones that contain the relevant chapters. And then again, within those chapters, we have all sorts of provision types that we coded for. Like, for example, here we have Eurasian Economic Union Vietnam Trade Agreement, which does have Sustainable Development chapter. And we can see that within the chapter, they address issues relevant to environmental protection, sustainable development, social development, and so on. Here we have a provision also on employment and decent work for all, and so on. These are the ones that we coded for in the matching matrix. As you remember, we can download the full dataset with the mapping results and review it. I won't do it now because I think at this point it should be quite straightforward to understand what it contains. But let's go to the per treaty summary dataset and see what it has and how the results are summarized. So this is our per trade agreement summary dataset. Let's zoom in on it. And as before, it has titles of the analyzed trade agreements, all of the relevant metadata associated with each of the trade agreements. And here at the further right-hand side, we come to the section that contains our mapping summary results. And the first column here is the one that contains number for the total number of articles within each trade agreement. Then we have a column that contains number of dedicated chapters in each of the trade agreements. Then here we have a number for the number of the articles that are contained within the dedicated chapter. Those articles may not have tier 2 keyword combinations detected in them, but by the virtue of them being present within the dedicated chapters, that is the chapters that in their title contain tier 1 keyword combinations, they are calculated into this indicator. And so you will see that if there are 0 chapters, dedicated chapters in a trade agreement, then there are 0 articles contained in those dedicated chapters. And if we have at least 1 dedicated chapter in a trade agreement, then here we will have a number for how many articles are contained within that chapter. And this column will contain the number of unique articles within which tier 2 keyword combinations were detected. And you will see here that sometimes that number would be lower than the total number of the articles contained within the dedicated chapter. It only means that that article, not all of those articles within the dedicated chapter contain tier 2 keyword combinations. But it also probably means that if we adjust our matching matrix in some way, we would be able to make these numbers in these 2 columns equal. Then you will also see that some of the trade agreements that do not have dedicated chapters, there is still an indication that there is at least 1 article that contains relevant provisions as coded with tier 2 keyword combinations, and that would reflect the presence of the relevant provision within the preamble. And then again, this column will show us the number of unique provision categories or topics addressed in a trade agreement. And this column shows us the number of unique provision types or topics addressed within the preamble. And again, as we go further to the right, here we have 5 columns for each of the topics that we coded in the matching matrix. And we can see within each of those columns the number of unique articles that have relevant provisions in them. So this is the per article summary dataset. And as you can remember, we can download datasets that are further disaggregated into different ways. So this concludes my presentation on Module 3, and this is the last module in this course. I hope that I was able to show you how to use the online tool so that you can make the best of what it has to offer by conducting automated text analysis and generating quantitative datasets based on your desired criteria. Thank you for your attention.